Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the tragic loss of TWA 800. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Viewers, this episode is Missile Attack. We have investigated the TWA 800 accident on the 17th of July 1996. This accident was both an air accident and a criminal investigation, and both conducted in parallel. 85 organisations were involved in the official investigation. The official report was published by the NTSB on the 23rd of August 2000. The 341-page report and 104-page appendix concludes: the probable cause of TWA Flight 800 accident was an explosion of the centre wing fuel tank CWT, resulting from ignition of the flammable fuel-air mixture in the tank. The source of ignition energy for the explosion could not be determined with certainty, but of the sources evaluated by the investigation, the most likely was a short circuit outside of the CWT that allowed excessive voltage to enter it through electrical wiring associated with the fuel quantity indication system. Commander William S. Donaldson, US Navy retired, in cooperation with the Association of Retired Airline Professionals, ARAP, presented a report to the US House of Representatives Aviation Subcommittee on TWA 800 crash on the 17th of July 1998. The Donaldson ARAP 127-page report concludes: there is no evidence that the centre wing tank of the TWA Flight 800 exploded due to a mechanical failure as the initiating event. There is substantial evidence that the centre wing tank was ruptured from an exterior shockwave and exploded late in the breakup sequence. Eyewitness testimony and forensic evidence in the debris field and the flight data recorder fully support a missile engagement of TWA Flight 800. TWA Flight 800 was destroyed by an air-bursting anti-aircraft missile. Richard, two opposing theories. Which is right?
Yeah, well, that's the $64,000 question, as my American friends would say. And yeah, the Donaldson ARAP and the NTSB both did very thorough investigations. The Donaldson ARAP report takes a top-down approach and based on eyewitness accounts, and the NTSB takes a bottom-up empirical approach based on forensic work and wreckage analysis. We're showing a table describing the different approaches and the evidence that they selected and how they handled uncertainty and contradictions. There is a fundamental difference of approach as well as a set of detailed differences on particular points. In my view, the only approach is to start with no starting assumptions, and all possible causes are initially equally probable, and all types of evidence must be considered, and facts are established by corroboration, and if possible, more than one type of evidence, for example, an eyewitness and a radar report. And finally, both a top-down and a bottom-up approach are valid, but they must align. They've got to meet somewhere in the middle.
There are a striking number of points on which both reports agree, though, Richard, aren't there?
Yes, and that is very important. So both the Donaldson and the NTSB align. They agree on the flight path and the timeline. They agree on the breakup mechanics, observations, radar, missile technology, wreckage, explosive residues, crew awareness, systems, and the operational environment. There are a number of points, and we're showing a table of all of the common points that they agree on in both the Donaldson and the NTSB report. And what we've done is taken it as reasonable that these common points are our starting assumptions. And from our earlier analysis, we have the common ground. Number one, normal climb to 13,800 feet, a sudden catastrophic event, and in-flight breakup. Number two, initiating event in the center fuselage wing center CWT region, and the nose separates early. Many witnesses see an explosion. Some see a rising streak. No radar object was tracked until it actually collided with TWA 800. And no identified missile fragments and no confirmed fragment spray pattern and very little trace explosive residues. So these agreed facts basically are the facts on the table and our starting point.
Now, Richard, you've performed a comparative analysis of the competing initiation hypothesis in the TWA 800 accident. Now, what did you find?
So this submission that we're presenting today is a structured and quantitative comparison of the leading initiation hypotheses, and it's advanced in relation to the TWA 800 accident. The purpose is not to displace the findings of any official investigation. The purpose is to provide a transparent evidentiary framework that may clarify areas where interpretations diverge and where further technical review may be appropriate. The two principal hypotheses that have been put forward historically are the internal initiation hypothesis, a fuel-air explosion within the center wing tank, as concluded by the NTSB. And the second one is the external initiation hypothesis, an external explosive detonation consistent with a missile airburst or impact, as argued by Commander Donaldson and the ARAP. And what this study has done is employed a Bayesian method that evaluates all hypotheses independently and allows both internal and external mechanisms to coexist, and quantifies evidentiary support without forcing mutual exclusivity. There were three hypotheses which have been evaluated. The first one is a CWT only. The second, H2, is a missile only. And the third one, H3, is a missile leading to a CWT explosion. In other words, a combined sequence. And the following evidence domains were incorporated. Number one, the center wing tank flammability. Number two, the fragment signatures. Number three, eyewitness streak reports. Number four, structural damage asymmetry. Number five, the flight data recorder anomalies. Number six, explosive trace residues. And number seven, radar activity. And then we included the following three prior information to the model. Number one, the fuel tank explosions have a historical precedent, and there are around 25 events which we have reported on previously. The second, prior information, there are over 200 surface-to-air missile SAM types which existed globally by the 1990s. And number three, terrorist attacks within the US number within the US number in the hundreds historically. And the priors were all chosen under conservative, global frequency and plausibility-based frameworks.
So the evidence model that you've built has several layers, starting at the shared initial assumptions. Can you explain the other layers for the viewers, Richard?
Sure. We're showing a table of the different layers. So we start at layer 0 with the shared assumptions that we've discussed already. And the first layer after that is the initiating event. And the NTSB report on the center wing tank fuel air explosion and the Donaldson ARAP report on the external missile blast. And the second layer is the validation approach, including explosion modeling, structural tests from the NTSB, and the structural signatures and FTR pressure data from the Donaldson ARAP report. The third layer is the missile role. The NTSB reported tests that a missile as an ignition source, and those tests failed and the theory was rejected. The Donaldson ARAP report treats the missile as the primary cause, and a pressure shock wave caused the damage to the center wing tank, which explodes as a result. And the fourth layer is all of the evidence layers, so the eyewitness evidence, wreckage evidence, residues evidence, radar evidence. And finally, there's a meta layer. Was the investigation normal and transparent, or political and constrained? And when you go into the NTSB report, they go to great lengths to reject the eyewitness accounts, and the Donaldson report goes to great lengths to reject the NTSB finding of a fuel tank explosion. So we're not rejecting anything. We're going through layer by layer, looking at what the evidence tells us.
So what were your findings?
Well, the key findings across all prior schemes and evidence weightings was that hypothesis H3, a missile leading to a center wing tank explosion, emerged as the most probable initiating event. The posterior probability ranged between 56% and 85%. And the result was robust under individual variations of the most influential blocks of evidence. And we make the following recommendations: an independent re-examination of the FDR anomalies, structural deformation, and witness trajectory evidence. The second recommendation, full release of all witness statements. Number three, formal evaluation of external, internal, coupled initiation models. And number four, an updated warhead forensic expectations using independent experts. Our conclusion in this Bayesian analysis provides a reproducible framework that highlights the technical plausibility of a combined external-internal initiation sequence, and it is respectfully offered to assist investigative authorities in determining whether supplemental analysis is warranted.
So, Richard, it wasn't just a centre wing tank explosion or a missile explosion. It was a combination of both, initiated by the missile explosion, correct?
That's correct. And the likelihood of a center wing tank explosion by itself was only 2.4%. The likelihood of a missile explosion by itself was 21.8%. The likelihood of a missile explosion resulting in a center wing tank explosion was 75.8%. And we looked at all the evidence that supports a center wing tank explosion and all the evidence that supports a missile. And neither were enough on their own, but put together, they make a robust case.
So, why the range between 56% and 85% in your initial finding?
It depends on the model inputs and on the stress testing of the model and the prior information. In terms of the model inputs, Donaldson disputed how dangerous Jet A fuel is in practice, but he does not produce strong contrary data that the CWT in this specific flight was non-flammable. He mostly argues the tests show Jet A is safer than implied. The FAA eventually brought in the regulation SFAR 88 and the nitrogen generation systems. So it depends whether you accept or reject the claim that the Jet A is safer than implied. And we chose to be neutral on that topic. The CIA and NTSB did a timing reanalysis, and it depends what assumptions you make about what type of missile was used and what the launch platform was. We preferred to keep the missile type and launch platform unconstrained. In other words, the missile may have been any type and launched from anywhere, a submarine, a boat, from a shoulder-held launcher, etc. The 736 usable eyewitness statements have never been officially released by the FBI. However, many witness statements have been documented elsewhere, in particular in the Donaldson ARAP report. In our view, these statements include expert witnesses, FBI agents, New York Air National Guard pilots, airline pilots, private pilots, marine power and sailboat captains, and all of these are trained observers. There are 37 airborne witnesses, 202 on the water and 497 on land. And discounting all witnesses who were not professionally trained observers, that still leaves 13 corroborated professional witness statements, and we decided to only include these 13 expert witness statements, which corroborated the statement of Major Frederick Meyer of the New York Air National Guard. The CDL and Bruntingthorpe structural work on explosives is very robust, and especially on the missile hypotheses. And Donaldson's hydrodynamic ram and doming arguments are also compelling, but we decided to remain neutral on these issues. And given the uncertainties in how much the FDR data spike is an artifact or is actually in accordance with the physics of what was happening, we decided to treat the evidence block 5 as moderate but not decisive missile leaning evidence. So we remained neutral on that issue. And finally, we also remained neutral on the explosive residue, radar, and naval activity evidence and the type of missile used. In our view, this was not a classic book type missile, as in the case of MH17, and rather a missile that is designed not to leave traceable fragments. We also performed stress testing on the model, and by that I mean we varied the evidence blocks, E2 on fragments, E4 on structural asymmetry or implosion doming, and E5 on the FTR data, static pressure and altitude spike. And what we also added was prior information. So, how common are fuel tank explosions in history? And we included the 25 fuel tank explosions in the history of aviation. And how plausible is the existence of a non-fragmentary SAM in 1996? And we included the history of the development of SAM and through the 40s and 50s, and that led to major states and military forces introducing SAMs in the second half of the 50s. And smaller systems suitable for close range work evolved in the 60s and 70s. And modern systems, which are man portable. Shipborne systems followed the evolution of land-based models and started with long-range weapons and steadily evolved towards smaller designs to provide a layered defense, including short-range weapons. In total, 221 different types of SAM missile have been developed by 25 states and several multinational programs. And how many of these are non-fragmentary missiles is not known precisely. And the final question was, how plausible is a missile launch off Long Island? And terrorist attacks against the US and other states are well documented, both before and after the TWA 800 accident. Historically, there have been 228 terrorist attacks in the US. So the result varies between 56% and 85%, depending what of these you leave in and what you leave out in the model.
So, the $64,000 question is, what is your final conclusion?
Well, we did look at the 736 eyewitnesses and concluded they cannot all be wrong and all discredited or discarded. But we took only the 13 expert witnesses who corroborated Major Frederick Meyer's statement as factually correct. And I have to say, I'm certain beyond all reasonable doubt that not all of the 736 eyewitnesses are wrong. And I'm certain that the 13 expert witnesses who corroborated Major Frederick Meyer's statement are indeed factually correct. So, in my view, the most plausible cause of the TWA 800 accident was the detonation of a proximity fused missile warhead that is designed not to leave traceable fragments. And the center wing tank explosion was a result of the missile detonation. And again, I would remind viewers the purpose is not to displace the findings of any official investigation or other independent investigations, but to provide a transparent evidentiary framework that may clarify areas where interpretations diverge and where further technical review may be appropriate in order to resolve the open questions around TWA 800.
Yes, it's one of the most questioned air crashes in history, isn't it?
Yes, and it's going on still many
Mm.
years later.
And we've found from all the comments we've received from the four previous episodes, it's very divisive. But the overwhelming sense is that everybody believes it was missile detonation,
Yeah.
and it's pretty compelling when you've got 13 trained professional eyewitnesses who all say they saw a missile. It's pretty compelling, isn't it?
It is indeed. And the NTSB went to great lengths in their report to discount or discredit eyewitness statements and preferred to base their analysis on the forensic and wreckage debris analysis.
Mm.
On the other hand, the Donaldson report goes to great lengths to try and discredit the NTSB's fuel tank explosion.
Mm.
Um, and and of course, if you start off with a major assumption that the other party's wrong, you're going to come to different conclusions, and that's what happened.
Mm. But I think your analysis, Richard, really does lay out the two arguments and then conclusively comes down on the missile detonation theory. It's clearly an outstanding piece of work.
Thank you for that.
Mm. So again, thank you for this great piece of work, and I'm sure it's going to provoke a lot of questions and a lot of support from our viewers.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, and I look forward to the questions that come in
Mm.
from the viewers.
Mm. So, viewers, thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep those great comments coming and those wonderful questions. And thank you to all of those who are supporting this channel. We really do appreciate it. And we're going to be back with your questions in a day or so. So we look forward to your company. Thank you very much indeed. And wherever you are in the world, please do enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.